Okay, guys, welcome to our week 3, day 2. Today, we are going to continue with exploring the things that we've learned before and putting all of them together to see how we can develop components, pass down props, and utilize mapping, yeah, and uh, some other methods, right? So today, today we are going to look at another problem. So in this scenario now, the question is create a React application using Vite, develop a functional multi-step form. The form should take first name, last name, email, street, city, state, zip. And when submitted, should pop an alert showing form submitted successfully. So what we're supposed to do here now is have like a multi-step form. So ideally, I'm sure you guys have seen those kind of forms before. Forms where you fill in some information and you have a next button. You click on next and you fill in more information and you have another next button. I think you, while onboarding on the LMS, you definitely went through that kind of form, right? Good. So that's the kind of form we are going to create now. Basically, we are not going to really talk deeply about forms per se because we will have a special class for forms, but we are going to just utilize the concept of forms and the input fields. I'm sure you will know what input fields are and how they work. So we're just going to utilize them to display or show or just display the functionalities of passing down props through these forms and having that step and utilizing that the whole concept of conditional rendering. So we'll start by creating a couple of components. So I'm going to build on the existing app we created. I will just comment out our all right. So I'm going to be using this. So what I'll do is I'll close this. Yeah, okay. And then I can use this. All right. Not confidential go. All right. So we have this now. All right. Let's empty this and just start from scratch. Okay. So let me know if you are following. Do you understand what we are trying to achieve now, what we want to do? Okay, all right. So first step we'll take is to create our components. So I want to create a new folder inside components and call it multi-forms. All right. And then inside multi-forms, I want to create a component called steps.jsx. So this component is where we will create the form, these like the form components, right? But we want to dynamically pass things into this very component, just like send props into this file, send things like form data or interact with the form data, send something like handle change into the input field, and then some other props here. So I'll start by creating let's see, our component step. Are we together? Yeah, are we together? Okay, all right. So first thing I'll do is create, let's create a display first. So assuming I want to have a title for each step, right? So I'm going to define title here. So this concept is not supposed to be strange anymore, right? Defining props is not strange to you guys anymore, right? All right, good. So I would now add that prop here. And then I want to have a field, like let's say I want to have a fields array. Now, what plans do I have for this fields array? I want to like dynamically map through my fields and then display the content of those fields, or utilize just one input and one label to display a couple of fields, right? So instead of having, okay, let me just write it out for you. So instead of having label, right? Instead of having label of say first name, then input then input of say let's say name of okay, so that's the first name. Yeah, then we now have another one to display last name. Are you guys following? Then we now have another one to display location. So you see that this repetition, this, I think someone said that before. It beats the whole idea. Yeah, you can follow up the class later. But plan better next time so that you don't find yourself in this kind of situation. Do you understand, Udo? All right, so let's say location. Yeah, location. Yeah. Yeah, so what's happening here now is that we are repeating all this stuff, but we are trying to React has given us the opportunity to have a lot of methods that we can avoid the whole concept of repeating things, which is why we want to dynamically use only one to display everything, right? So in this kind of case, in this scenario now, I want to say for this fields prop, right? I want to map this field prop fields. All right. So let me use a div. Let's have a div. Okay, and then okay, and then this will be field. Let's use index. Okay, so next step is to close this. So we want to bring this in here. So if you feel lost, just call my attention. Okay, raise your hands. I did not say unmute yourself. So we have our label and our input field here, right? And we want to map it based on the field. So we are going to have in our field data, we are going to have a title, a name property, right? And then for our input field, we're going to have type, field.type, and then we're going to have name, field.name. Are we following? Then for values, we're going to have form data, field.name, and then we should have an unchange, which we are going to be bringing it as a prob. So we are going to define the unchanged somewhere else, and then we bring it here as a prop. So we say handle change. Okay. And then we want to define this handle change up here. Then we might want to add a little bit of styling. So let's style it here. Okay. Input style. All right. So we have our input field setup done, right? And we are mapping through that input field and we have everything. Now we want to add buttons, right? Because for every step, we want to be able to next or have a previous, right? Now we are going to be bringing that function to next and previous from another component as a prop. I don't know if you guys are following this, what's happening, and you understand what's happening. Anyone has any question? All right. Any other person? Okay. Well, before we continue, let us, I want everybody to welcome my mentor and boss, Ogochukwu Odom. Welcome, sir. Sir, please, you might want to unmute and say hi. Or will you do that at the end of the class? Hello, hello, sir. Later, okay, all right, sir. Okay, all right. So yeah, let's continue. So we want to have a scenario where we have buttons that we can click forward and click backward, right? So we'll come down here and give it a div. Yeah. And then we can define our button inside this div. So we are going to be using an on-click event. I think we have been using on-click, so I don't expect that to be, I don't expect it to be strange. Okay, so what we are going to do here, we are going to use this handle previous click. It's going to be a function that we will be calling from another component. So it's also going to be a function that will pass as a prop down to the steps component. Is that clear? All right. So we have our button and then we close our tag. So let's, I think we should still have a button style. All right, so we have button style here. Okay, good. So we want to call this previous. Now that's not the only button we need. We need to have another button for next. So let's replicate this code and give it its own function. So handle next step. Likewise, we'll be sending it as a prop to this component. So, all right. So do you guys have any question? Do you have a question? Any question? Raise your hand, please. Or just type it in the text box. All right. Okay. No questions. All right, let's just move ahead. So normally when we have steps, right, we are supposed to have like a final page where we should collect all. Okay, Lois, let me hear you. Go on. Unmute yourself, Lois.
I'm trying to.
I can hear you now.
Okay. First, that is number one question. Sorry.
What's number one question?
I said, is it a
I think you're
trying
breaking.
to?
I can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I said, this is a you are trying to create an input field or something.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm doing.
Okay. Okay. Then I want to ask this all these. Yeah, please, all these prompts, why they are included in that curly braces, it makes them reusable.
We have been using these curly braces for the past.
I know. I said I know, but I mean these prompts makes
props.
props makes it being props makes it reusable, right?
The component itself becomes reusable because you are passing down props. So we are destructuring the prop and then using it here. So basically, this component like this now can be used in different places.
Okay.
Understand?
Then
Now,
okay.
yeah, continue.
Button style. Under styling, that button. Okay, let me use the input style for instance. Style.
So you remember when we handled when we did the cards, we did styling and I did my styling inside the component. Do you remember?
Is there a way the button style where it was created?
So this is where we are not creating it. That is actually the initialization of that button style. So what I need to do now to utilize that button style is to come below here, and then I will now define my style.
Okay, that's the definition I'm trying to ask. Okay, okay.
We've done this before, and it feels like you're taking us back.
Sorry.
Do you go back to watch the classes, or once we finish the class?
I did. I've been watching on the classes, even the last one. I'm on it now before the class started.
Okay. I want us to endeavor to try to see how we can move forward.
I understand what I'm asking you now.
Okay. All right. So you are good now?
Yes.
All right. So for every other person, when I ask if you're okay, please respond. I won't like to handle something in this class, and then when we are trying to use it in like more complex scenarios, you start bringing us back. Because this question because I want you to understand. Okay? Please respond in the text box if you get that. Yeah, I'll come back to the button styling. Okay. Should form data be a prop? Yes, form data should be a prop. Nice observation. So we are going to add form data as a prop. Yeah. Okay, so let's move. So I was talking about the fact that when creating in this kind of forms, it's not really every time, but for this scenario, I want us to assemble all the data that we are collecting from these input fields, right? So I want us to assemble it and save it in two states and then display it on a screen where we want to see everything that has been created, right? So on that screen, we want to display the name. We want to display based on the question, right? We want to display the first name, the last name, the email, the street, the city, the state, and the zip code, right? So based off that, we will now have another component that I will call, it will be the last step. So I'll just call it review. Let's call it preview. So I'll call it preview, right? .jsx. So before I move forward, are we clear on what's happening here, everybody? We'll come back for styling when we're done. All right, okay. So yeah, so for the preview page, right, we're going to basically just map all the stuff and then handle submit in this component, right? So we're going to say we want to preview all the information. So H1 review your information. And then we want to create a div. So I want to have a style here. So I'll say review style. Let's call it a container. All right. Then we close that. Okay. So for this now, easy now. We are going to be bringing in that form data, right? Do we have a shell for what form is expecting? Yeah. So I'm going to create that now. We haven't actually created the array of fields that we are supposed to pass to that very step form. So I'm going to do that in the app.js folder, right? So I'm taking them from the children to from the children to the parent file, so that they understand the underline of what's happening before they even send the props in. So when they are sending the props in, they are just, it's like, okay, oh, this is what we are trying to do all along, right? So it's like giving them that clarity. Mr. Gochuku, that's for you. Is that fine? Yeah, definitely. Could work the reverse way too, of course, definitely. So I don't know, I think it has been working for them. I think from the last class, I took it from the children up. So it was a little bit clearer for them. So I feel like I should just continue with that format, if that's okay. For the class, do you guys want us to start from the top component and then come down to the other components? Just text box. You want it to come from the top. I see. Parent to child. Okay. From top. People did not say all this one now. Okay, if that's the case, then let's go ahead and pass it from the top. All right. Okay. That's fine. Okay. But at least you understand what we did here in the steps, right? Huh? Okay, good. So you see, these are like the little things you need to take note of. If you don't understand, if something is not working for you, because I felt it was working for you guys, And possibly if someone had said, boss, we cannot do, or Dave, we cannot do this, we are not really following, we would have changed it and would have started from the top. But regardless, let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Yeah, so let's start from where we want to have our components display. So I think first step here, we will need to import useState. Okay, useState is imported already from our last code. So I'll say const, and I want to initiate the state for the steps. Okay, so we have the set step, and then we want to set it to 1. So we're going to have 3 steps, yeah, 3 steps basically, because we want to have a review screen after having our other steps, right? Then I'm going to define our form data. So for our form data, we have first name. This is just the initial state. Okay, all right, yeah. Thank you. So our form data, this is just the initial state. So we have first name. We're going to initially keep it at empty string. The last name, why is this? Okay, so we have 3 steps, right? And when we want to handle the step conditions, we are going to be using like the numbers. So we are using 1 because we want to iterate from the first step. We are giving that first step the ID of 1. It's like giving it an ID of 1, right? So for other steps now, good, yeah, okay. So we don't have password. We have email. And then we have street. And we have city and state. Yeah, and then zip. Okay, so now that we have our state, we can go ahead and create our functions. Yeah, ideally, it should. Did you get that? But you need to understand that we are going to actually define our steps at the end of the day, because it's not like from this, we have not actually defined the steps that we are supposed to use, Abi. So we are still going to define our steps. And all I'm doing here, what I'm going to be using this one here to do is iterate. So I'm still going to add to it. So just allow the flow to go so you can possibly understand why we did some things. At least you understand that this is use state and anything we do here is an initial state, right? Lois, do you understand? Lois, please, quickly. Okay.
And sorry,
This text box, just respond in the text box. I don't know why you're always so quick to unmute. Okay, let me keep going. So const, let's define our next step and our previous step so that at least this can be a little bit clearer. What's happening here can be a little bit clearer to you, right? So const handle Next step. So we already have this function here that we're supposed to be using as prop, right? So this is where we are defining that function. And then so again use narrow function. And then let's set the step. The step plus 1. Okay, so does this make any sense now to you, Abubakar and others? Does it make any sense to you guys now? All right, good. So that's why we are using 1 here. We can actually use 0 here, right? And then in our form, in our setup, we're going to start checking from 0, right? But I'm just using 1. It's not like it's a conventional stuff. You can actually use 0 if you want. So we'll just do the same. So this will be the reverse for handle previous. And this will be the reverse for handle previous, right? And then the next function we want to work on is our onChange. Yeah, so const handle change equals to okay. So what we want to handle when we are doing our onChange is we want to create, we want to add the name and the value. Right, and we want to take this from the target. Pagination. Well, why do you want pagination? Yeah, Abiola, is it Adaobi? Adaobi, why do you want pagination? Pagination is for displaying data. So you want to limit a particular number of data, right? That's where you are thinking of pagination. Don't be in a hurry. We'll talk about pagination when we handle things like table display. Handle change. All right, so we have our name and value, and then we want to set our form data. So for form data, we spread the form data, and then we're setting name as the value for our form data. So the name value is going to be attached to each of them based on their name. So whatever comes from the input field that has the first name as name, the value is going to be attached to the first name. Likewise, last name, likewise, email, and others, right? Are we good? Are we following? So I want to also define our handle submit. And for that, definitely. So what we want to do is we want to have an alert for every time we submit that form, right? And the alert should state form submitted successfully. Okay. And then we want to also see, we want to visualize on the console our form data. Okay, do we have understanding of what's going on now? Is it clearer? And that will be, are you good? Okay, Abubakar, I hope everybody is good. We can move. All right. Yeah, it can be anything, but we are going to be specific with what we want, right? Because we have already defined what we want the name to be. So the name is David, his first name, right? The value can be anything, but the name has to remain as the key. So this is the key, right? The key is what we are using here. So that name is the key, but the value is what we are going to be adding. So assuming we want to hard code the values now, we can hard code the values here and have David here, right? And have Edu here. Do you understand? All right. But in this case now, we are taking the value from the input field that we are going to be using. So we are not hard coding it here. So that's why we're defining our initial states. And then we want to update the form data, right? Using this. We are updating it based off the name, the name key. We want to use the value from the input field to update the name key in this state. So that when we collect all this data, all the value data, if we console or log this, we should be able to see the name that was inputted on the form, the email, the street, the city, the state, and possibly the zip code. Okay, let's go into writing the actual component. Let's display our JSX. So for this step, we are going to, first of all, let's call it what it is. Let's give it a title. So this is a multi-step form. All right. So what we want to do is define these steps now. We want to use these steps. We want to start arranging and dynamically passing or dynamically pass down our input data, right? So that we can visualize what the steps look like in real time. So we'll say step. So we want to check if the step, that is this state. So if this step, right? If this step is equals to 1, right? We want to display the first step. So if you understand what's happening, just indicate that you understand. Yeah, in some cases, of course, we can actually pass E as a parameter here, right? But I'm already handling that using the E.target here. Do you understand? So we want to conditionally render these steps. So for the steps, we have a couple of, so let me divide this view so that, so we have a couple of props that are being expected, right? So we have the title, right? We have the title prop. So we want to pass the title into that very title, right? And then we say for title, we want to call it user information. Right? Then we want to pass down fields. So I told you when I was creating that steps component that for the fields, we want to have like an object, right? So what I want to do, we should be able to do this and then pass it down here, but for time, let's just create it inside here. Yeah, so it already gives us what we want here, but that's not ideally what we want exactly. So we want to have a label. Let's have a label. And then for the label, it should be first name. Okay. All right, then this should be last name. And then this should be email. So yes, that means we want to display everything step one and this component. Do you understand? Good. It's like basic English language self. We can use English, we can just use English language to describe it. So it's like saying if it is this and this, it should display on the DOM. Okay, so I think we have this done. So our next is form data. So we are supposed to pass down the form data as well. And that form data has already been set to state. So when we have the input fields working, we should be able to have our form data and pass it into these fields, right? Are we together? So it's for values. We are collecting that values and then we are now displaying that values here. We're adding that values here. So handle change. So remember we already passed handle change down as a prop. So now we are going to actually add it there. So now that handle change should work now if we make an input to our input field. So that will be all for step one. Based on the props that we are supposed to utilize in our code, that will be all for step one. So what happens next is we want to now define step two. So now I'm going to copy this and paste it. So for this step, we want to have different informations, right? So first thing I'll do is to change the name here. Let's call it address. Address information. If you're not following, just write in the text box or raise your hand. I hope everyone is following. All right. So for this one, we want to have street, city, and then state. I think we have two more. Or is it one? Yeah, I think one zip. And then we want to have zip. Let's call it zip code. All right. Okay, so we have this. Then we have the form data and we had our handle change intact. So that's done for step 2. But now there's something I want you guys to see happen in step 2. So if you notice, for step 1, we have only, we did not add the previous stage, right? We're only, okay, yeah, there's one thing left. I think we've not added the next stage. So handle next stage should be added here too. All right, so I'm copying to avoid typos so that we have consistent information across the application. I can still type it in, but yeah. All right, thank you. Just as far as you understand what I'm doing for now, I've taken that into consideration. I'm using a different system anyway from what you're using, but I'm going to take note of it. I'll check the, what do they call it? I'll check the keys for Mac. On the next step. Good. So we have handle next step defined here. That's in step 1. Okay, this should be step 2. All right. So for step 2, we are going to be having, we need to visualize the previous screen as much as we are visualizing the next screen, right? So that's where we are going to now have previous, handle previous. This is where we are going to have handle previous. Okay. So do you understand what's happening? Are we following? Do you understand why we have, okay, all right, good. So we have this previous because we want to activate this button, right? We want to use this for this button, but there's still another added thing that we need to do here so that on the first screen, we don't visualize this previous button. Because ideally from the first screen, there's no previous, right? So you want a scenario where if you are on the first screen, you want to see only the next button. And then if you now get to the second screen, you can now see the previous button so you can go back to see the first screen. We'll handle that in a bit. All right, so we now have our final step, which is the review step, right? So for our final step, we will have step 3. We will have our review component. So for now, that component is preview. Yeah. So we'll have our preview components here. Okay. And then for our preview component, what information we need there is form data. We need the form data. We also need our previous because I want to be able to see. Let's say maybe we got to the end and we are not comfortable with the information that we have. We want to be able to go back and change those informations, right? And then we want to have our handle summit. Yeah, okay. So let's be sure we have that correct. Okay. So we can now go ahead and visualize our components. But before then, we have some issues. Now, one of the issues we have is that we have not done with these components, right? Even though ideally, basically, we will still be able to visualize these components with just the name, right? So let's just import it. Let's have a visual representation of what we're doing. Okay, we're going to comment this out. Okay, and let's see what happens on the user interface. So we have input style is not defined. Okay. So we know that here we define some styles that we have not actually created. So let's just post. Okay, so we just have input style and button style for this component. So for this, our app.js, we also define styles. Okay, we don't have any style, good. All right. Okay, so you can see the form is showing now. We have our form component. So I can make input here. We have an error. Yes, 100%. And okay, are you following? Okay. Okay, let's go back to our previous and let's just refresh and start again. All right, so we have multi-step form user information, right? And then we want to start by adding David and adding Edu. And then we want to add the email. Right? And then we want to now go to the next page. So if you notice on this screen, this previous is actually displaying, right? Which is not ideal for the first screen. So what I'll do now is to take that out of the equation by coming here. You say if it is not, all right, so I want to say if it is not, it has to be previous stage and then display this. Okay. So who understands this? Who understands what I just did here? You don't? Okay. So what I just did here now, if you notice from this component, right? So from this component, for some steps, we don't have handle previous defined. Do you understand? So all I'm saying is for any step, if there's no handle previous defined, so if this component is not receiving handle previous, as a prop. You should not display this button. So you should display this button only when this handle previous is defined. That is when it's receiving. So if it's not receiving the handle, it will not display. So you see that now, because there's no handle previous in this first screen, we won't have that previous button. So if we click on next now, you now see that because we have handle previous defined, we can now see previous here. So if I put street and barcode and cross river and state, right? We should be able to go to the next form. But now we cannot visualize what we are supposed to visualize because we have not written out, we have not done this form, this preview stage, right? Are we together? Okay. So I understand it may be a little bit complicated, but I hope people understand. If you don't understand, okay, let's just give room for questions. Let's have like 5 minutes for questions. Anyone has any question? Raise your hand up. Lois, are you clear? Yes, please. Unmute and ask your question.
Okay, what I did this one you explained last, is it the use of conditional statements and whatever?
Yeah, it's more like that. It's more like conditional because we are
Okay.
using a ternary.
Please, can you recap again? Let me understand. I'm trying to.
Okay. So you understand the fact that we want to have this button display only from, say, the second and third screen, right? Because
Yes.
apparently from the first screen, there's no previous screen, right?
Mm.
Now, in our code here, in our app.js, for step 1, if you notice for step 1, we have only handle next step, right? But for step 2, we have handle next step, and we also have previous next step. Good. So now, all we are saying is for this step components, it is receiving these 2 props, handle previous and handle next. But we are saying that at any point, if it doesn't receive this very one from the parent component, right? We don't want to display this button. Do you get it? So what we are saying, why we are saying this and this, we are saying that this one must be available and this one too must be available before we can visualize anything here.
Okay.
Do you understand now? Lois, do you understand? Is it clear? You can ask a follow-up if you don't understand. You can ask a follow-up. We have 5 minutes for questions. Okay, Mr. Gochukwu, let's hear from you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I believe you can hear me.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, Lois, just to help answer your question. So I believe that you guys have probably treated different ways of using conditionals. Now, what this particular section is talking about, or what it's trying to do, is that you're saying that if for any reason you don't have handle previous, so if you're not passing handle previous as a prop, that button should not show. Now, let me just, it's a computer science kind of thing. We have and or. So when you have and says that a condition must be true. So those conditions have to be like those two conditions have to be, well, it's usually 2 conditions. But in this case now, you're saying that if for any reason handle previous step is maybe false or is not available, that button is not going to show. So if we go to a particular step and then handle previous is not passed, that means that button, that previous button will not show. But if it is fast, then that button will show. I don't know if you get it. Did you get that?
Lois,
Yes.
for you. Do you understand? All right, cool. Okay, so we can go on. Thank you very much, Mr. Ogochukwu. Much appreciated. Okay. All right, so we move to handle these components now. So let's utilize our form data in this component and display our inputs. Display our input details, right? So yeah, let's move. So for these components, so we have like a review container style that we created. So the first step we are going to take is to now add our objects, right? So I'm going to use a method. Excuse me, let me connect my monitor. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use an object method. Of entries. So I want to pick it from form data. And I want to map it. And I want to map it by key value. Yeah, so I'm going to explain what I just did just in a minute. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm sure you guys are wondering what's going on, what's happening here. Why are we using object, right? Normally when we do mapping, we just pass the form data and then we go ahead and use that data, like map that data, right? So what I want to do now, I want to have a key value pair, right? So what the object does, it's a method that returns an array, right, of a given object. You understand? So we want to return that object's own enumerable string key property. Do you understand that? Anybody understand what I just said? So we are trying to return this, our form data object. We want to return that form data object's data in a string key property kind of format. Do you understand? Let me just write it out for you. Let me write out this form data for you to understand better. Yes, that's true. So we did not pass a lot of things. I think form data is one of them. We're also going to pass, we still need to pass previous. So let's just pass the states, the props rather, so that we know we have done with passing props. Okay. So yeah, so so for this now, let me explain this thing to you. So our form data right now is coming in this format, right? It's coming in this format. Let's say first name It's still coming as key value, right? First name, John, and then last name, Andrew. Okay. So presently, this is how our form data is coming. But when we use these objects, the entries for this form on this form data, it converts this form data to this structure. So for this now, we will now have first name, John, then last name. All right, so yeah, then last name that. Yeah, okay, so yeah, this is what this object.entries does to this form data. So this form data, this is the object for the form data, right? So what is this doing? It is going to enumerate the string keyed property of this stuff, right? Of this data to make it look like this. So now we're not having like inside this array, we're not having arrays of first name, of name and value. So the key is the name, the value is John, right? So we're not having like exactly in same array, yes, exactly. And then they are now separated by like they are now different arrays on their own, right? So I think what you can do is you guys can go ahead and research how to understand this better by research, right? So that we can move forward with the class. But basically, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to convert this data to this. All right, thank you. So what happens now is we now have a key and value, right? So what I'm saying is inside each of the arrays that we are creating, we want to pick the first, we want to use the first as a key and use the second one as the value. So if we come down here now, we should be able to now, let's use H1. H1. Let's give it a div first before adding our, so that we can start. Let's say div, okay. Okay. All right. Review item style, good. Okay, so we can use this as our style. And then let's define, let's use strong. So for strong, we are taking the key, right? So now, basically, for this key, you see that there's possibility of this key having like spaces, right? All right. So what we want to do with this key now is we want to add space before each capital letter for many reasons. Possibly we want to say key dot replace. So this is like formatting stuff. So we're just saying if it is a capital letter, right? We want to replace it with a space. So I'm going to create a space first, then all right, okay. So this, I'm trying to be, I want to display this key. That is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Do we understand what happened there? Okay, so this is what the key looks like, right? The key is first name, and it is camel casing, as you can see, right? Good. So what we want to do is now we want to display. We are displaying this first name in this strong. Do you understand? This one now is actually supposed to display on the DOM. So we cannot display on the DOM this first name as camel casing. We want to display it as ideally first name like this, right? So what this is doing, or what this is handling, is just checking for where there's capital letter. So when it sees where a capital letter is, it replaces that capital letter with a space. Do you understand? With one space. Is it clear? Exactly. Then we can now display our values. So let's use a span to display our values. Span tag. All right. To display values. Okay, good. I'll have to take this out. I can take this off, yeah? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah, for those who are confused, check the text box. Mr. Ogochukwu has given you guys little insight on what we just did. Okay, so we now have this, right? And our next step is to create our buttons, right? We want to have our buttons to number one, be able to go back, and then number two, be able to submit our form. So we're going to use handle previous first, right? So we have our handle previous button. Then we have our submit button. Good. So for our submit, we are going to use handle submit. So we have already called in those props, so we are good to go. All right. So if we save this, yes, it's going to look shabby, but we are going to, okay, so there are some styles that are not, yeah, this style. So let's define that style quickly. Style. Okay. Then I think we need to, okay, I think we already imported that. Okay, so if we come here, we should be able to visualize our form now. So we have our form. Let's make inputs. We input here, and then we do same here. Let's call this Cross River, right? And then we go to next, and we have an issue. Review item. So there are two styles apparently that we haven't defined. Okay. Yeah, so let's go over it again. Let's refresh. All right. So we have this. That's our first step passed. Then we have our second step. So if we pass our second step, we should have everything aligned. So you can see last name, Edu, email, street, city, state, zip code, and first name. Are we following? Are we following, guys? Okay, so first name displayed below and then also displayed and the first one is even wrong. Okay, so let's look at what happened there. Let's go back and check why we have a particular error. So this is why we're having that issue. Do you understand? So this should be email, not first name again. Then for this part, I think we have first. There's the typo here. Are we good? Did we get that? All right, okay. So if we try it again, we should have a different outcome. So we have this, and then we have this. Yeah, so you see we have a different outcome now. We have our first name, David, last name, Edu, email, and everything is here, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Are we good? I need response from as many people as possible. I don't like that some people are actually silent members on this class. I need to see response from everybody, if possible. Okay, so okay, Lois, do you have any issues? Hello, Lois, do you have any issues? Do you understand what's going on? Is Lois in the class? I don't understand. Lois, speak now. Okay, so no one has any question, right? Faith, I'm seeing you in the class. You just came in. How long have you been on the class? Just have been in the class. Just write in the text box. Okay, which of this error, right? So we're having this error because, like it states, right? Component is changing an uncontrolled input to be controlled. This is likely caused by the value changing from undefined to a defined value. So the error message is already clearly stating the issue. But why I avoided talking about this error message is because today's class is not particularly about forms, right? And if I want to discuss forms in this class now, I might digress from the actual purpose of this class. So the purpose of the class is to like put together everything that we've been learning. I think for last class and this class, we've been focused on creating components and child components and some in some cases nested into like child, grandchild, and all that here. So yeah, we have the error because we are actually controlling we are changing an uncontrolled input to a controlled input, right? So basically, there are controlled inputs and there are uncontrolled inputs. Whichever one is used is fine, but when you want to use forms and input fields, you want to either use a controlled input field or use an uncontrolled input field. That is basically the warning. So, Mr. Ogo, I hope that's cool. And for any other person that had that question in mind, I hope that's clear. So we are going to handle forms, I think, in our next two classes. So I will elaborate on this whole concept, the uncontrolled concept and the controlled concept. All right, sir. Thank you. So now if we submit this form, we should have a pop-up. Form submitted successfully. So ideally, if we're supposed to pass this form to, like, say, an API, maybe make an API call, we will be able to visualize, we'll be able to hit the endpoint with this data. But first off, we have an issue. And that issue is with the fact that we are supposed to have we are supposed to visualize our form data in the console, right? Because we actually stated in our app.js that we want to, that's in the summit. So we stated here that we want to console log our form data. But as it stands, I can't see their form data. So let's figure out why we are not seeing our form data. Okay. All right, so it turns out our form data has displayed. Let me see why it did not display before. Okay, good. So what happens is, I think after we unmount our submit, after we unmount this before we can see our form data, so we don't have any issue with our code, guys. All right. So do you guys want us to go ahead and do styling for this? Maybe make it look a little bit better. Text box, please. Are you guys with me? Should we do styling? Style it a little, make it look good. We need to know the JS. Okay, good. Okay. So is Abubakar speaking for everybody? Okay, so you guys are going for functionality over aesthetics, right? Oh, okay, all right. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. So I think for today, that will be all that will take for this class. So our next class we'll talk about, on Monday, we'll talk about routing, React router. So we can start having different pages and linking them together, right? So what you can do for me is go back and, yes, but please, can you push to GitHub when you are done? Nah. So what you're going to do is watch the class again. Anything you are not really clear on, you can definitely watch the class again. But I gave you opportunities now to ask questions. Adaobi, unmute yourself. Are you lost anywhere?
No, not really. I'm just asking so that in case if we have any confusion, like,
Okay.
but I
So
don't have any question.
okay, so what you do is you just watch the class on YouTube. You have the clarity that you want.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So we are going to end the class now. Thanks guys for coming. I'm not sure this is a full class today. You guys need to reach out to your class, your colleagues, and find out why they were not in class today. So follow up with them, okay? Then Faith, we need to talk. You came to the class late today. You need to explain to me why you did that. All right. Thank you guys.